Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with the next update for my Panda palette. I'm currently working on 3 separate palettes with eyeshadows in them that I'm trying to pan as much as possible. I do have my original Panda palette, which is the Nikki Tutorials Beauty palette, which I have a couple of shades that I'm still focusing on. I have my Franken palette, which I created from eyeshadows from that palette. And lastly, we have my new Panda palette, which I introduced at the halfway point of the year, which is the Huda Beauty Gold Obsessions palette. So I'm going to go through all 3 palettes today and let you know where I am with them. But before I jump into that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So I'm going to start with my Nikki Tutorials and Beauty Bay palette. This was my original Panda palette, but I have since decluttered a lot of shades and I have deputted a couple as well. But I still have 6 shades in here that I'm still trying to use as much as possible and hopefully use up a couple. So this right here is where my palette looks like last month. I actually hadn't used this one since the last 2 updates. So since update number 6 and update number 7, I didn't use this palette at all. However, I have actually used this palette a little bit over the past month, and this is where it is today. So I'm not sure how different it will look, but I will go through the eyeshadows that I used. First up in the palette we have Blend and Snap, which is that pink shade. I did not use this one. However, the next one, which is the shade Blah, which is this kind of light pastel yellow shade, I actually used 5 times. This is a shadow that I'm currently focusing on. I'm not wearing it today, but I have been wearing it a lot. And how I've been using this one is actually as like an almost eyeshadow like setting shade. Yes, it is very yellow, and I've been doing it with like warm tone looks, so it kind of creates that first kind of base, and it just happens to work a lot with the shadows that I'm panning, so all the greens and the yellows that I've been using. So that's kind of why I've been using that shade. And the reason why we're doing that is because you use so much eyeshadow every time you use it in that way. And I don't generally like setting my eyeshadow primer, but I have been doing it this month just because I want to get use out of the shade, and honestly it helps blend my yellow shadows out quite a lot. So I kind of use this to set my primer, like I said, but I do leave like the top part here as clean as I can, and if it gets too yellow still, I blend it out with like a cream shade afterwards. So that is the shade Blah. Then the next 2 shadows in the palette I have not used. That is Basic Truth and All In. I haven't used either of those. Basic Truth, I'm currently using a different cream colored eyeshadow to blend out things, which is why I'm not using this one yet. And All In I just haven't gone around to using. Next up though, on the last row, we have 2 remaining shades, and one of them I have used, which is the shade Pride. That is the pink shade on the bottom. I used this one as a nail polish once, and I count 5 uses for that, so I had 5 uses on that shadow. You might have seen me wear that kind of pink nail look in my most recent videos, and that was from the shade Pride with a topper shade on top. And then lastly, the blue shade I have not used either, but I do have 2 shadows that I've used a little bit in here. So the shade Blah and the shade Pride I have used 5 times each. So for the next month, I'm going to hopefully use this a bit more. I do have a goal which I'm going to cover at the end of the video, but I'm hoping to get some more use out of this palette and all of the shades in here. And I'm going to continue using Blah to set my primer, as long as I'm panning those yellow shadows that I'm currently am. So hopefully I can get some more use out of that eyeshadow. So before we move into my new Panda palette, let's just go through the Franken shadows as well. This again is Franken shadows from the Nikki Tutorials palette, which I just mentioned. So I'm going to go through them in order. But first, before I do so, this is what my palette looked like last month with the Frankens. So you can see the shadows that I'm working on there. And now today, this palette looks like this. You can see all of the shadows right there. So let me go through them in order. So first up, we have the shade Mila and Plot Twist, which is like a light transition shade. I have used this one twice, so I have a little bit of use on it, not too much though. Then by far my most used shadow in here is the next one, which is the shade 5 AM and Plot Twist. And this one I have used 28 times. It's my current brow shade. I'm wearing it today in my brows. It works really well, and that's how I've been using it. So I know for a fact this one is going to be used up relatively soon. I do think it might take 2 more months to use up though, but I am working away on it. Next to that, we have the shade Mila and Blah, which is like the mustard shade in the palette. And this is also one that I have used quite a lot. I've used this one 6 times. So obviously not as high as my eyebrow shade, but I have used it quite a lot for being like an eyeshadow for my eyes. So there's 6 uses on that one, and I can see a little bit of a dip forming. I don't have pan yet, but I'm hoping that maybe next month I can hit pan on that shadow. Then for the 2 greens in the middle, I have used both of these 2 times each. The first one is a mix between Ooh and Blah, And then the second one is a mix between U and Mila. So both of them I used twice, and I believe that I had pan on both these since before. Then for the last row, we have the shade Blend and Snap and Plot Twist, which is the pink. I think I actually switched place on this at some point. I might switch them back for simplicity's sake, but yeah. I have the shade Plot Twist and Blend and Snap, and then Amsterdam and Blend and Snap. And the first one, the pink, I've used once, and the purple I have used twice. So not too much use in here, but I am working on the shadows in here slowly. And lastly, before we move into the actual palette that I'm currently panning, we do also have my Franken bronzer. And this one was also a mix between a couple of shadows from the Nikki Tutorials palette. And I Franken the shade Mila, 5 AM, and Basic Truth. And this is what the bronzer looked like last month. I did have a goal that I wanted to finish this one this month. And this is where it is today. And I did actually finish this one. The thing there in the middle is your stainage. You can see hopefully there better. It is just staying there in the middle, and I'm wearing the last bit of this one now. I've actually reached for this one 17 additional times. Again, the last time now in this video, which is really, really exciting because it means that I have finished this Franken bronzer. And what I will do since I finished this bronzer is I will count up how many total usage it took me to finish it, and then I will count like those usage for every single one of those eyeshadows. Just a quick math, I think it took 62 uses to finish this Franken bronzer, so that will be 62 uses towards Mila, 62 uses towards 5 AM, and 62 uses towards Basic Truth. So that's kind of how I calculate it. But yeah, this one is out now, and it will be leaving the project. Then for the main attraction again, we do have the Gold Obsessions palette from Huda Beauty. This is the main panda palette that I have at the moment, and I'm trying to use this one quite a lot. I did have a mini goal of reaching for this one in every single look that I did this month, and we are currently filming this one on the 29th, so I have 2 more days to go. But so far I have done that, so I'm going to cover that in a second as well. But this is where my palette was last month. So you can see that I had 3 pans in it, which was very exciting. And I did have like an official goal to hit 3 more pans this past month. But again, that is where I was at the last update. And this is where this palette is today. So again, comparisons there, and I will go through each shade in order. So the first shade in the palette is like this. They don't have names, so I just call them what they look like. But this is like a pink gold kind of shadow. It's like a pink base with a gold shift. And this is one of my most used shadows because it's very easy to reach for, especially on the inner corner. So I have reached for this one 8 times in the past month. And I'm hoping that the pan has expanded a little bit. And if not, the dip has definitely gotten like wider. So 8 uses on that eyeshadow. Then the second shadow in the palette is like the blending shade. It's like more of a pink peach kind of blending shade, but I call it the blending eyeshadow. And this one I have reached for 3 times. I do have a slight dip in this shadow, but yeah, not too much. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a dip showing in this shadow by now. Then for the third shadow in the palette, we have a very exciting update because it is the kind of taupe shimmer. And this is one that I actually had pan on over the past month. It took me 9 uses in total to hit pan on it. And I reached for it 8 total times this past month for a total of 11. So I have reached for this one quite a bit. And it's another one that I really enjoy. I'm actually wearing this one now. So it's the one that I'm wearing in this look. I'm wearing very, very subtly, but I'm wearing it like right here on my lower lash line. I just wanted to do more of a colorful look today, and obviously this is like not the most colorful palette apart from the yellow gold, but I didn't want to go for yellows and gold today because I've been wearing a lot of them because of my product level up palettes. But let's move on to the second row. The deep brown there, as you can see, I do not have pan on this one yet. This is one that I thought I would hit pan on this month, but I did not focus on this one. However, I do think I should be able to hit pan on this one next month. I did reach for it 5 additional times this past month though, which is pretty good. The center shade, which is like a greenish gold kind of shadow, this is another one that I hit pan on this past month. It only took me 4 total uses in this project to hit pan because these pans are very, very shallow, and this is a bit more of a softer and flaky shade. I really love it though. It's beautiful on the eyes, and it's one of my favorite shadows in this palette. And I reached for it 3 additional times this past month for a total of 5. For the mauve kind of transition shade, I definitely have expanded the pan a little bit. I remember this has a very, very small pinprick pan at the last update. But I used this one 3 additional times, so a little bit more usage there as well. Then we actually have my least used shadow in the palette, which is this one right here. That is like the one that I call Taupe Champagne. And unfortunately, I didn't reach for this one at all in the past month. I just haven't been gravitating towards this one. I do feel like it's light enough that I could use it as an inner corner highlight as well, but I just haven't been reaching for it. So it's definitely one that I need to step up my usage game moving forward, because I actually only have one use on it so far since I started working on this palette. So not great, but at least I have reached for it once. But I mean, again, that is not really that great. So definitely step on my usage game on that specific shadow. The second to last shadow is actually one that I have reached for quite a bit now recently. I do have 13 uses on it, and again, this is another one that I hit pan on this past month. It took me 10 total uses to hit pan on it, whereas 8 of those came from this month. I actually didn't have any more uses after hitting pan on it until earlier today, because I decided to repaint my nails, and I decided to use this as a nail polish. So this is what this one looks like as a nail polish. I did 2 layers of it because it's quite a sheer kind of shadow, but I really like how it turned out. So I counted 5 uses of this 13 as that nail polish, and you can definitely see that this is quite a used pan now. It's definitely like getting lower, but again, also I did hit pan on it, which is exciting. So that's especially an eyeshadow that I think I will be able to expand the pan quite a bit next month, because it is getting lower around the pan due to me using it as a nail polish. Then the very final eyeshadow in the palette is another one that I really enjoy using, and this one is the yellow gold, and I have reached for this one 4 additional times, and that is actually the only eyeshadow in this palette that I had pan on before starting this Panda palette. So like I said, I did actually manage to reach for that palette every single look that I did this month, and so far I've done 29 looks. We are again on the 29th today, so I've on average done 1 look per day, but I for sure have had a couple no makeup days, and I think I also did like my makeup twice, maybe 2 or 3 times. So it has evened out. Like today, for example, I redid my makeup after work so I could film. But yeah, I have done approximately 1 look per day, which is really exciting. And I have 2 more days to go for the month, so I will use the palette for those 2 days as well. So hopefully I should complete that goal. But that is something that has been quite exciting. It's been definitely fun to get used out of the palette, and it means that I familiarize myself with the palette quite a bit, and I'm really excited to continue working on it. So lastly for this video, I'm just going to cover my goals for next month, and I do have quite a lofty goal for next month, but I do want to get use out of all of the eyeshadows that I'm panning. And because of that, I have put the goal that I want to reach for every single eyeshadow in this project, including the original Nikki Tutorials palette, the Franken eyeshadows, and my new Panda palette 5 times each, which might be a stretch. So, you know, there's 9 shadows here that I want to use 5 times each. There's 7 shadows here, and there's 6 in this palette. So again, I want to use all of those 5 times each. We'll see if I do it. If I can't reach that goal, that's fine. I'm being quite ambitious, but I do feel like I feel like the pressure of getting towards the end of the year, and I do want to finish as many eyeshadows as I can. So because of that, I do want to get as many uses as I can out of these eyeshadows. So that's going to be my goal for next month. I do also, with my new Panda palette, which is the Gold Illusion palette, I do ideally want to hit a couple more pans. If I can hit pan on the remaining shadows, that would be great. So that would be 3 more pans. We'll see if that's possible. I'm not going to push it. I'm going to focus more on the 5 use per shadow. But if I can do that, like I said, that would be amazing. So that is it for today, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know how you're doing with your Panda palette down below. And I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.